Hey everybody, this is the PixelBlips podcast. I'm Andrew Ryan. My co-host is Dave DeWart. Dave, what have you been playing this week?
Well, since it's been out for the last month, I've been playing a lot of Destiny still. I found that I like my Warlock more for PvP because they can just zone people out because of their grenades are just like area of effect that just persist.
Yep.
As well as their super, if you spec it the right way, you can just throw it down in the middle of a control zone and nobody can go in there. I've been doing that. I leveled my Warlock to 20. My Titan's already like 27 or so. Not a lot of content in that game. Replayability does not count as content, Bungie.
Because it's an MMO.
Mostly, yeah. It takes... Let's just say I started my Warlock.
Now, did you buy the season pass with all the?
I haven't bought it yet. I was thinking about it. I want to see if I'm still playing it in December.
Is that when the new mission?
That's when the first set of missions comes out.
I do like the names of the new missions because they're like old school D&D, like Expedition to the Barrier Peaks.
Yeah, it's like I
names.
think one is like House of the Fallen. I don't know. I don't know what they're. I don't remember what they're all called right off, but. Apparently that stuff's all leaked out, like some of the locations and the new strikes and stuff they're adding.
I mean, I think Destiny is the Haloist thing Activision could have done.
And
like it is pared down to the core, like almost infinitely monetizable. There's always going to be a steady drip feed of in this case they're not called map packs, but
I mean,
standard mission packs, not like a full-on expansion.
Well, yeah, but I mean that's.
It's like if their Call of Duty model and their World of Warcraft model had a baby.
Well, the World of Warcraft model though has a monthly fee on it, and they come out with a new expansion.
Hence, they had a baby.
And they have an expansion every 2 years instead of every 4 months or whatever.
Yes. They had a baby.
But I like the game, and I can't seem to stop playing it, but it's just, I'm playing it because I'm having fun with it, and if I'm not having fun with it, I'm not going to play it. That said, I've had more fun in a first-person shooter in the PvP of all places in this game than I have in a while, but that's because it's the Halo PvP.
Yeah.
Right? Like, the only variable is, if you've got a gun with special properties, that goes into the PvP,
I mean, it's kind of like what I talked about last time, where we talked about old games are still fun, because they're just fun.
Yeah, they're not. There's like the persistence of your character doesn't really matter to me in this context of because with Destiny specifically, it doesn't matter what level you are. If you go into the Crucible, you're basically the same level as everybody else.
Yeah.
The only real difference is your gun doesn't have any sweet mods, so whatever.
I mean, we can all think of moments where like we've played a game and the graphics weren't up to snuff or the story wasn't up to snuff, but the gameplay was very enjoyable.
It's fun and tight, and that's really.
And like if you get a game that's like has any one of those three things that's just excellent, it can propel you through like past everything else.
Yeah, and I think because Destiny's story is so meh and unexplained, and apparently it was better a year ago before they made a bunch of changes. Well, there's these rumors that the story was a lot more involved, and that EXO lady that you see at the end of the first mission just standing there watching you fly away, like she actually has a name in the old story, but now she doesn't, or at least they haven't said what it is yet. But I don't know. I'm having fun with it. If I'm going, I will get the expansion packs. I'll probably buy them piecemeal so that like if I don't wind up playing all of it, or I don't wind up liking whatever they give me, then I can stop. But
see, that's the thing with me. Like, I'm playing Shadows of Mordor. I really like Shadow of Mordor. They've already talked about the season pass extra content, and it's stuff that on paper it sounds like I would like, but I don't want to buy it yet. You don't want to I don't know, like, and you're saying there's missions where I can play as Celebrimbor wielding the One Ring against Sauron, but does that mean that that's like an extra 3 or 4 hours of story content with cutscenes and everything?
Or is it a single mission?
Here's like the Final Fantasy 13-2 stuff. Walk into an arena, fight in the arena against this person. That's it, you're done.
Yeah, I don't.
And I'm like, I don't really.
And that's kind of the problem I have with a lot of games nowadays. Anyway, is, before the game even comes out, they're already like, oh well, we are gonna have all this other stuff later, and it's like, well, if you already have it mostly done, why didn't you push the game back 2 weeks or 3 weeks, and then just ship it with the game? You
No,
know,
I don't.
I mean, I really don't like DLC. I think if you buy a game and you get your and if the game was worth $60 when it came out, because even though I've dumped a shitload of time into Destiny, I don't feel like that game is worth $60.
Okay.
And in order to make it worth $60, I now have to spend another $40.
See, now I don't agree with you there, because the game development is such that at a certain point,
I understand
they
have to go, okay, we can't fit this. We have to stop here, like
to make date
scale creep or whatever they call it.
And then we'll just shuffle this stuff off and sometimes that stuff is that they cut out and then revisit, like in Dragon Age Origins, those the Stone Golem missions.
Yeah.
Like that's really fun and cool. And so I don't really mind day one DLC because I understand that, okay, there's a process. These things have to be tested. They have to be produced. They have to be shipped. They have to eventually get to the store, and then you have to buy them. And that's like a process of like weeks, if not months.
Well, I mean,
during that time, you don't want your people just hanging out doing nothing.
Usually when a game goes gold, as they call it, which means it's ready for production, it's about a month to 2 months before actual release. And that's pretty much when all development stops on the main game, and they're working on bug fixes and expansion content.
Yeah.
And
so in that 2 months, you want, if I believe the Shadow of Mordor production timeline was 2 years.
Yeah.
2 months out of that is a 12th of your production time.
Roughly, yeah.
And your tools are.
But Shadows of Mordor was something else before it was Shadows of Mordor. It was supposed to be another Batman game or something, and then that game was supposed to be the team that was working on that game when they were still like figuring out what it was going to be. The original idea for it was supposed to be another Batman-esque game, and then I guess they lost the licensing, or they found another team that's going to do better, that's doing the new Batman game that's coming out next year.
Interesting.
And so they shifted it to the Middle-earth game, what it is now.
Well, they did a very good job of covering up the seams then.
Well, I mean, the combat, as you were talking earlier, the combat is
Batman Arkham.
It's very similar. Like, they're using the same engine. It's just they went ahead and they were like, okay, well, we're going to take all the features, the gameplay mechanics of the Batman game, and we're going to adapt them to this Middle-earth thing, and we're going to throw in the Nemesis system for funsies. Which it'd be kind of cool to see, like, the Nemesis system in Batman, where you have all these thugs, and then you eventually have to get to, like, the bad guy at the end.
Yeah, and
Joker or whatever.
At work, we were talking about that. This would be a great thing for, like, Grand Theft Auto.
Yeah, that'd be a cool GTA type game.
Like, because you
have the mob bosses, and then you have their lower bosses as the triangle goes down. Yeah.
And it's kind of like the Nemesis system actually, at some points, because you read so much into it, is more interesting than, or it feels as interesting as a story mission.
Yeah.
Because you're going after this guy that killed you, or you're going after this guy that killed your friend, or...
Yeah, whatever. Okay, so now that I'm done talking about Destiny for now. So I'm going to ask Andy a bunch of questions about this game.
Okay, before we go in, I just want to say this before we get off the Season Pass thing. I liked how PlayStation did Season Passes on Uncharted 3 and God of War Ascension, I believe, where if you bought it during the first week to 2 weeks,
it was like
you got the Season Pass for free.
If you bought the game?
Yeah, if you bought the game, they were like, here's the Season Pass for free. Like, to me, that makes a lot of sense.
Did you have to buy it through the store?
I think so.
Because I bought Ascension day of.
Yeah, and it came with a code, and that code unlocked all of the multiplayer stuff.
I don't know. I'll have to
look. That was all their add-on content.
I'll have to look. I don't remember.
Okay. Anyway, to me, that makes a lot more sense because that drives people to buy it the week of.
To buy it early.
You're not punishing, like, the people that are buying your game the first week, the people that are excited, the people that are fans, are the people that are going to want to keep playing the game, right?
Well, I mean...
So that's like your promise to them. There will be a steady,
stream of content. But see, like, for God of War, specifically, like, those games are pretty much encapsulated. Yeah. Like, all the DLC that I remember, I could be wrong, I don't remember there being a whole lot of, like, story stuff for Ascension. I think it was mostly the multiplayer PvP stuff, which I gave... zero craps about.
It was pretty fun. I gave craps about it for about 2 weekends.
I played a couple hours of it and I was like, all right, this is kind of cool, but at the same time, it's like, this is not why I come to God of War. I wanted to come to God of War to play the story, and my wife likes watching the story, so she wouldn't like watching me play PvP for hours on end.
But my point remains the same. Is that I believe that's a cool way to do it. Like if you
That's a
bought
good way to
Shadows
do
of
it.
Mordor within the first 2 weeks, they're like, hey, you get the season pass for free, and then we're also going to do like special expanded stuff beyond the season pass that will be DLC that you can buy on its own.
Yeah. Well, and I can
But
see
we're gonna
like,
make a promise to you that we're gonna keep throwing stuff in there.
yeah. Well, and
And a lot of like the cool little.
that's the thing with Bungie, right? Bungie's got like a 10-year plan for Destiny, and it's like, well, okay, fine, but if it's $20 a pop every time, 3 times a year,
Yes.
you're basically buying a new game every year. And
Yes.
right now, I don't know how their model's going to go. If they're ever going to level, like, if they're ever going to increase the experience level cap, or if you just have to keep getting more and more light on your gear.
Maybe.
Like, that seems like that's going to suffer the same issues.
I imagine they would increase the level cap. They'll be.
I mean, yeah, because right now you get to 20, and then you have to start getting gear with light on it, and then light increases your level
We've
further.
been driven to the level cap increases since the SSI. Wait, before I say this, let me make sure it's correct. Yeah, since the SSI Gold Box games.
Yeah.
Of like you can get to level 10, and then you buy the next game. You can
And
bring
then
your characters
you
over
can take
to
your
level
character
20.
to 20 or 15 or whatever. Yeah.
But so I think that's cool. And so far, a lot of the DLC I've seen for Shadows of Mordor that I've like bumped into, that is not the story mission stuff, is stuff like, okay, we're giving you guys a new warband, and this warband has a theme, special costumes and stuff like that. So you'll go hunt them, and then if you hunt the war chief, you kill him, he will get a special rune, which is, in the terms of Shadow of Mordor, this will be a little bit more. I mean, it's not story content driven, but it is fun, and it does add something to it. It adds variety to it. Not that there's not variety in the Nemesis system, but we can get to that now.
Yeah. So anyway, so what is the main story of this? Because I understand that you are this ranger or whatever, and you somehow become not possessed, but like you share a body with the Celebrimbor spirit.
Celebrimbor,
whatever. I got it close enough.
Yes, you did. I knew who you were talking about. So I'm just saying next time.
Anyway, so you and the spirit dude take the same body basically, and he's like the voice in your head or something, and he pops out from time to time to do story bits and whatnot, right?
No,
he's just a voice in your head.
Well, no to just the story bits. So the story is, if you've seen Fellowship of the Ring, good. If you haven't, go see Fellowship of the Ring right now. But if you've seen Fellowship of the Ring in the beginning,
wait 3 hours.
Isildur. Yeah, we'll wait. Hit pause. Hey, how was the movie? No. So in the beginning of the Fellowship of the Ring, Isildur, the human king at the time, or the human prince, because his brother, he's king of Southern. Never mind, you don't care. He cuts the ring off of Sauron, and Sauron explodes, and all of this happens in Mordor and on the slopes of Mount Doom. However, I'm trying to get my timeline straight. Over 3,000 years pass between that, well, technically the death of Isildur, and Bilbo finding the ring with Gollum. So that's 3,000 years. So after Sauron is destroyed in air quotes, Mount Doom no longer erupts. It goes dormant.
Yeah, for a long, long time.
Yeah. So as you can tell, if you live in the northern Pacific area in the United States, Mount St. Helens been dormant for a while. After its explosion, there are trees growing on it. There's grass. There's greenery, blah, blah, blah. So Mordor, when you're there, has become this. Now, Mordor is always kind of a dark and tainted land full of orcs and other bad things. So the people of Gondor, Minas Tirith, Faramir, Boromir, Denethor, blah, blah, all those people, they build giant walls. The Black Gate that you see in Two Towers is one of those walls. Minas Morgul that you see in Return of the King is also another one of those outposts. There is a wall there, but I don't think you saw it. Anyway.
Just to section off Mordor, basically.
Yeah, just to kind of say, okay, sectioned off. Now, what they then do is they then staff these areas, people that watch the wall. Now, the game takes the stance that is kind of punishment. Like, if you've not been a good ranger, they will stick you
You have to be on the wall.
Like, on the it's basically like if you're in the military, we're going to station you at, north of the Arctic Circle at, some geological site, and you're just going to be bored as shit forever.
That would suck.
So that's where the game, air quotes, begins. Now, what happens is Talion has a son. Talion's your ranger character.
Okay.
Talion has a son and a wife. You don't know why, but he's been exiled to the wall at the time. And his son has grown up there. His son wants to be a ranger. So how they teach you to fight is sparring with your son. And then how they teach you to sneak is sneaking up on your wife to give her a hug and kiss. Which some people have had a problem with. I think it's kind of nitpicky. I liked how it was presented in the story. I wish they delved more into Talion's background in a different way than they do, but we can get to that later. So eventually, spoilers for the next Hobbit movie, The Battle of Five Armies, the necromancer, Sauron, has been kicked out of Dol Guldur, which is where he's been hiding, and he flies back to Mordor, stronger now that the ring has been found. Incrementally stronger.
Yeah.
Um,
He leveled up.
yeah, he leveled up.
Like once.
And that time is where the game starts.
So, is that after the end of the Battle of the Five Armies? Or is that, like, in the middle of what would be that book? Is he kicked out and then the Battle of the Five Armies starts?
Since I haven't seen the Battle of Five Armies yet, this might be...
But I'm saying, like, you've read the books.
Yes, okay. So in the books, in The Hobbit, while Bilbo and company are both caught up by the elves and also pestering Smaug, and Smaug goes to torch Lake Town, that is when the fall of Dol Guldur happens. Now, if you've seen the last two movies, that timeline's not going to sync up 100% correctly, but I believe
it'll become pretty close.
the clearing of Dol Guldur will happen before the Battle of Five Armies, when the Battle of Five Armies happens in the movie.
Okay.
Because one of the
so theoretically, the Battle of the Five Armies is going on right now while you're playing the game. No, or it's about to.
No.
God damn it.
So the game starts...
So it's after that. All right, whatever.
So the game starts, they sweep back into Mordor, the evil forces. This guy, the Sauron's Black Hand, who's a person, rounds up you, your wife, and your son, and sacrifices everybody. And when he does this to call a wraith.
Like one of the ring wraiths, or just a random wraith?
No, a specific wraith.
Okay.
And in doing this, he does it when he kills you, because you had to watch your wife and son be slaughtered. You are now bound to this wraith. The wraith doesn't know why he's bound to you. Eventually you find out by doing Gollum missions, because at this point Gollum would be in Mordor. Oh, that's the other thing. You're bound to the wraith, and in the time between bound to the wraith and waking up and being able to play the game, an indiscriminate amount of time passes.
So we don't know if it's weeks, days, or years.
Yes. We know that the orcs have been able to break a lot of the Gondorian strongholds and tear stuff down and build it up orcish, you know?
So minimum a good couple of months.
Yes.
Maybe a year.
Maybe. So it doesn't really know. I don't know if it's ever going to tell you how much time passed, because clearly orcs are living in Mordor and they've taken over the wall and everything, and they've gotten Mordor pretty much on lockdown by the time you wake up. So the cool thing then is Gollum is in Mordor. As if you've watched Fellowship of the Ring, you know Gollum gets captured in Mordor.
Yeah.
So you're continually using him to hunt out things about the Wraith, because he calls the Wraith the Bright Master.
Because he's the ring. He's the guy that made the rings.
Because he's the guy that makes the rings. So Gollum would know him.
Yeah.
So he tries to win the Bright Master's admiration, favor.
Yeah.
By giving you things, by finding these artifacts and showing you the way to find them. The cool thing is it kind of plays out in like a Frodo-Sam way, where he loves the Bright Master.
But he hates you.
But he hates the Ranger. Because the Ranger's tough on him. There's a time where he grabs Gollum by the throat, slams him against a wall just like Faramir does.
Yeah, they don't get the... Andy Serkis didn't do the Gollum voice,
No,
but they had somebody who sounds just like him.
Oh my God! Pat this guy on the back.
Now, did they do like the Andy Serkis thing though, where he's doing all the mocap for it?
Yes.
Okay.
Well,
as much as possible, anyway.
I guess Andy Serkis also directed or coached the mocap actors.
Well, that makes sense. I mean, he's like a huge mocap guy, and he's like a pretty decent on-screen actor.
Yes.
He's not the best guy, but he'll definitely win, Academy Awards for animated creatures and things like that.
But Troy Baker, who voices Talion, who's also the guy from Infamous, second son, he and oh God, who was the guy that voices Nathan Drake? Nolan North.
Yes.
they both took Andy Serkis advice. So did the Gollum guy. So did the Celebrimbor guy.
Well, yeah, and Nolan North he's in the middle of making Uncharted 4
yes.
at this point.
Well, and Nolan North is also the voice of the Black Hand.
Yeah, well, he does a lot of voice work.
Yeah.
Like he's all over the video game industry.
Yes.
So
anyway, as Gollum, steadily kind of finds out, and at the moment, I'm at the story point where he remembers his name, and so the cool thing about that is the Wraith goes, "I'm Celebrimbor," and Talion knows more about who Celebrimbor is and what Celebrimbor did through legends and myth than Celebrimbor can actually physically remember. So they still don't know why they're connected yet.
They just know that they are connected.
Yeah. As someone who has read the books, knows who Celebrimbor is, I can tell you the reason they're connected is that Celebrimbor also had to watch his wife and son killed in front of him.
Oh, well. Are you sure that's how it's going to play out, though? No,
but
like
I
95.
have a great hunch. So far, the stuff that they've added into the story and the lore of Middle Earth,
because this main character
all
guy
syncs
doesn't.
up.
Yeah, like this main character guy was created for this game.
Yes.
So it's not like he's a big part of the lore, and we have a lot of lore to play with. But it is
Yes.
really neat that, even though I don't know the lore like you do, I have a general idea of like, okay, the rings were made, this bad stuff happened, they went away for a little while, and then they came back. Like it's really neat that they can just expand on the Middle Earth universe in a way that gives them the freedom to do that, but stay within the confines of these big story beats. Because, like you said, there's thousands of years between some of these big events.
Yeah.
So there's
and between the end of The Hobbit and the beginning of the Fellowship of the Ring, there's 80.
Yeah. So I mean, even in that 80-year span, a lot of stuff can happen that is not explained, or you can play Random Ranger number 9 and just run around and slaughter orcs for 30 hours.
I have a question about that. The thing you said about Monolith changing a Batman game into another game. Where did you read that?
That was talked about. I heard that on the Bombcast because they were talking about how that game was a Batman game at one point when they were working on it, and then they had to change it up for whatever reason.
Okay, so the thing about that is, and it's funny that
because
that happened, is the last Middle Earth expanded universe game, War in the North, also had that same problem
where it was
started as
supposed to be
game,
something else, and now it's
and then they were like, wait, we have, because during the production of whatever that game was going to be, Warner Brothers received the rights to The Hobbit and to The Lord of the Rings for the video games, and having both of those things together covers a lot of the information of Middle Earth.
But that's why it's, I mean, wait, so who put this out? Warner Brothers?
Yeah.
Okay. I was gonna say, because I thought at one point like somebody had the Lord of the Rings name, but they also the Middle Earth name has gone to a different publisher or something, so that's why it can't be Lord of the Rings, but it can be Middle Earth, and it can take place in the same universe.
Yes,
sort of.
So what happened in the early 2000s was the movies were coming out. Tolkien himself never gave away the rights to his books.
No.
To make movies or video games.
Or
after
anything.
He died.
Well, didn't he die before video games really became a thing?
Yeah, he died in 1973.
Okay, yeah. So, well, wasn't the Odyssey wasn't out yet.
Okay.
That was late 70s.
Anywho, so after he died, his youngest son Christopher Tolkien, who is in alternating times a really cool guy and also kind of like a stodgy jerk. So I mean, I can understand why he doesn't like Lord of the Rings fans, like 100%. And I've seen him talk. He's a really intelligent guy. He knows a lot of stuff. He's the type of person that you could just listen to for hours on end, but also kind of a jerk. Anyway, so he became the executive of the estate and all of his father's writings. He eventually released this book called The Silmarillion, which covers all of the legendarium of Middle Earth. So if you only wanted to ever read one book about Lord of the Rings stuff, I would say, if you really want to tackle it, it's a hard read, but read...
especially if you know how Tolkien is about details.
Yes. Read The Silmarillion because it actually covers everything in The Hobbit, everything in
Lord of the Rings.
The problem is, around this time, the rights to The Lord of the Rings were sold off to an animation company through the rights to produce a radio teleplay. At the same time, the rights to The Hobbit to make a cartoon movie were sold right after Tolkien's death. So already we have two linked things that the rights have gone in separate directions.
Are you talking about the one where everybody looks like a Cabbage Patch Kid with a really big nose?
Yes.
Okay. Because they have really curly hair and fat faces.
Yes. So in the 70s, there was The Hobbit, which was made by Rankin Bass, who you might know from Thundercats, or the Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer stop motion stuff. It was sold to them. They did it as they did The Hobbit as their Christmas special one year for NBC.
Okay.
Cool. 2 years later, Ralph Bakshi, the animator who's great, who you might know from Fire and Ice, the animated 1977 Lord of the Rings. Let's see what else did Bakshi do. Cool World. Bakshi's done American Pop. He does a bunch of really awesome stuff.
Yeah. Okay. So
like his stuff is really weird and trippy.
Mm-hmm.
He did The Lord of the Rings, which up until that point was the highest grossing non-Disney animated feature film.
Yeah.
And it covered The Lord of the Rings to halfway through The Two Towers. Because they were going to make 2 movies.
And then they didn't get the funding to do it.
Yeah, the funding for the second movie fell through. So then Rankin Bass came back 2 years later and did Return of the King, which covers halfway through Two Towers through the end of the books.
All the way to the end of the books.
Yeah. So by the time 1980 rolled around, there was already a Lord of the Rings trilogy out there in film.
Yeah, but
keep in mind, this only happened because the rights for Lord of the Rings that went to Bakshi were actually from a radio teleplay.
Yeah.
And the rights that Rankin Bass had, they bought off of to make the animated Hobbit, and then they bought the rights for the Lord of the Rings teleplay, and then they made Return of the King. And then nothing happened.
That's really weird.
Yes. So then the video games started coming in. So we had things like The Hobbit on the Apple II, which was licensed from the book.
Yeah.
But then we had The Lord of the Rings by Interplay, which was licensed from the animated movie. So the licensing for The Lord of the Rings has a long history of being really messed up.
And convoluted and scary. It's kind of like the Marvel verse right now.
Yes.
Who knows what's going, and apparently the Deadpool movie is going to fall into the continuity of the X-Men series versus in the
Marvel series.
The Disney Marvel series, which is probably better.
Because they had Deadpool first in their movies.
Yeah, well, yeah, they had Wade in the X-Men Origins Wolverine movie. But I mean, yeah, it was a terrible movie, but you got to see Deadpool, sort of.
So that's been going on for a long time. So you fast forward to the mid-90s, when Peter Jackson goes to pitch The Lord of the Rings as a film, he pitched The Hobbit and then 2 Lord of the Rings movies. No one wanted to do it. He went to New Line. New Line said, wait, we can't get the rights to The Hobbit, but it's 3 books, why not 3 movies? So Peter Jackson was okay, we can do a prologue, and we can do this, that, and the other thing. And then that became The Lord of the Rings that we have with Viggo Mortensen, Elijah Wood, Liv Tyler, Cate Blanchett.
All those other people.
So then, as that stuff started ticking up, the problem became there was now rights out there to a film adaptation of The Hobbit was separate from a film adaptation of The Lord of the Rings. And there was still the right, technically, the rights to all of the books that were written, just the books, not the movies.
Yeah.
So there's a really great article on Polygon 2 weeks ago about how they had to make sure it was true to the book and it was okay with Tolkien Enterprises, but it wasn't interfering with the movies. It didn't look too movie-ish. They had to change Aragorn. They had to take Aragorn's beard off for the game that was based off the books because he had a beard in the movie.
But not in the books.
Really weird stuff.
It's like caught him on a clean shaven day.
Yes. So.
Did he still look like Viggo or no?
No.
Not even a little bit?
Yes and no, because like the look of Aragorn, I think Peter Jackson hit it so close to the book that it was just, you weren't going to get far enough away from that to make it look different and it still look like what he's supposed to look like.
Yeah.
So.
Dark-haired, light skin.
Yeah, dark
eyes.
Clothes, long tapered cape. So eventually, if you remember, there was the Two Towers game on the PS2. There was the Return of the King game on the PS2.
Yeah.
There was a Fellowship of the Ring game.
Aragorn's Quest.
That was based. Well, we'll get to that.
Okay.
That was based off of the books. There was really going to be a Treason of Isengard game. Treason of Isengard is the title. There's the 3 Lord of the Rings books, and then there's 4 other Lord of the Rings books that are written from different drafts of J.R.R. Tolkien's work in the Histories of Middle-earth. They're called The Return of the Shadow, The Treason at Isengard, The War of the Ring, and The Dawn of... Wait, is it The Dawn of the Fourth Age? I think it's The Dawn of the Fourth Age. And those 4 books cover what happens in the Lord of the Rings. 3 books that we know. You don't need to read them, don't care about it. But that's what this other company was going to do to make a Helm's Deep battle and all this stuff. And that never came out. Eventually, that deal folded. And then they sold the rights to Turbine to make the Lord of the Rings Online. So Lord of the Rings Online was all off the books.
Yeah.
Which was pretty cool.
Yeah, I mean, they're all right. It's but at that point, you're basically, random elf.
Yes.
12 billion and...
Well, and speaking of that, there's an EA, who had, remember you own the movie rights, they launched a Lord of the Rings role-playing game that they had originally envisioned to be something like Dragon Age or Baldur's Gate. But since they could only use stuff from the movie, they eventually made it into this Final Fantasy X where you are random dwarf from the right, random elf from the left, random dude, going through following the Lord of the Rings characters, the Fellowship, because that's all they could use.
Yeah. Because
so they couldn't have you go anywhere else. So
they couldn't have you explore areas that, even though they were in the movie, weren't specifically, explored?
Yes.
What?
So, they could do...
So you could go through Moria, but you had to go through the same sections of Moria.
Pretty much. Or ones that looked similar.
Yeah.
They could go to Lothlorien, but they couldn't go to Mirkwood, which is on the border of the northwestern border of... or northeastern border of Lothlorien.
Yeah.
So very weird, very convoluted. Still a decent, okay game if you don't mind Final Fantasy X. So after that, EA had some extra money to spend in the mid-2000s.
Yeah.
And they bought the rights to the book.
So now they can do everything.
So yeah, at one point, the only company ever, video game-wise, to have the rights from everything from the Silmarillion all the way through to the Book of Lost Tales, which comes after the Lord of the Rings. They had it all. They were going to do this book called The White Council. The White Council was going to be basically Skyrim or Oblivion in Middle-earth.
That would have been cool.
Really cool. However, at a certain point in development, according to the Polygon article, the guy said, we're going to need 2 more years to finish this, and EA said no. And then sat on the rights, and no one had them at all. Fast forward another couple of years.
They had to do something with them, otherwise they'd lose them, right?
Yes. Fast forward another couple of years. We're now on the verge of making The Hobbit. So if you remember, MGM, the movie studio, went through a big financial time. They were the people that ended up with the rights to the film adaptation of The Hobbit from all the way back in Rankin Bass time.
Yeah.
So
shit.
So if New Line wanted to do this, they had to negotiate with MGM. Well, MGM wanted a bunch of money because they were having a big financial problem. Same thing with the James Bond movies. Eventually, Warner Brothers stepped in and said, we're just buying it outright. We're buying the rights from New Line, which is our subsidiary company, and we're buying the rights from MGM. We're going to cut you a deal for them where your logo also shows up before the movie, which is why I have to sit through freaking 3 minutes of logos at the beginning of every Hobbit movie.
That's okay. The movie, it's proportional to the length of the movie, right? If the movie's 2 hours long, you only have 2 minutes of logos. This movie's 3, so you have 3 hours or 3 minutes of logos.
So all of this stuff happened during that whole conversation. They also bought all of the rights to The Hobbit and The Lord of the Rings in a negotiation with, at that point, Tolkien Enterprises. When they morphed into Middle-earth Enterprises, they said, Christopher Tolkien, who edited and wrote the Silmarillion, said, I want this back. This got sold out from under me. You're not touching this part of my dad's legacy. So he took this Silmarillion, which is a large part of the Middle-earth mythos, back and said there can be no video games done on it. Well, so until he dies, because he's kind of a stick in the mud, I don't think you're going to see a Silmarillion game. You're definitely not going to see a Silmarillion movie.
Well, as you said, the Silmarillion covers everything. So.
Well, yeah, the Silmarillion would really make a really good Game of Thrones type series.
Yeah, with less, whatever.
Snoodly pooping.
Yeah, that stuff. So it's similar to what happened with Douglas Adams, right? His last book came out, and somebody else kind of edited it together and wrote what he thought they would write to put it out.
Basically, when J.R.R. Tolkien died, he had basically been writing all of Middle-earth stuff from the time he was in his early 20s to the time he died. So when he died, there's a famous picture of the inside of his office or storage room. There's nothing but stacks and stacks of long boxes full of notes. That's just Middle-earth.
Yeah, well,
because he was that type of guy that was if if Aragorn is son of Arathorn, well, then who's Arathorn? Oh, he's Arathorn the second. Okay, well, then who is Arathorn the first, and who are his
dad?
descendants?
And
Blah, blah,
just
blah.
so on and so forth, just back.
Yes. So, and all of that going back is eventually Silmarillion, which brings us to what we're talking about today, which is Shadows of Mordor. In the back of the Lord of the Rings, The Return of the King, there's an appendix, which goes over a Cliff Notes version of the Silmarillion in terms of times, dates, chronology, and stuff like that. That is where Peter Jackson and the people at Monolith are mining to get all that added stuff that is showing up in The Hobbit.
Because it's technically not in the Silmarillion, it's in the Lord of the Rings book.
Yes. If you could give us the Silmarillion, we could definitely do a better job of showing this off.
I was looking to see if I have them on the bookshelf back there, but I don't. I think they're in my car.
So the cool news is, as you're tooling around Mordor and Shadows of Mordor, as all these open world games have, a legitimate cornucopia of collectibles. One of the types of collectibles are artifacts. So maybe the artifact is like a brand, like a metal brand that the orcs use to brand their slaves.
Yeah, like they do with cows.
Yeah, it gives a little description of it, and then you have to spin it around and find a memory point. You click on the memory point, and it'll play a little audio log scene.
Oh, okay. So it's similar to, what the hell was that game? It was another one of those investigative games where if you spin the thing around, you get to see it. Damn it, it's something I played recently too. I forget. Go ahead.
Anywho, so one of these I found was a statue of Melkor, who is the previous Dark Lord, Sauron's boss, who eventually gets destroyed in the Silmarillion before everything else happens. But the cool thing is, as you spin it around and you play the audio log, it just kind of goes over who Melkor is, what this is. It's like an old relic, of a cult. But then you play the audio log, they talk about a specific part, a specific event that takes place in the Silmarillion that is referenced, that they can talk about because it's referenced in the Lord of the appendices, which breathes a lot more life into the world.
Because
if you're a huge Lord of the Rings movie fan, and for whatever reason you're allergic to the Silmarillion, go around, find these artifacts.
It's like this thick, and it's
it's written like the Bible. It'll help you breathe life in, because it talks about who Phazon is, who Melkor is, what happened to ancient Numenor, why Aragorn's ancestors needed to get on the boats and come to Middle-earth and then fight Sauron, all these things. It's really good. It's really well done. I wish for that kind of world depth. Really great way to do it. How they added Italian story depth is when you turn on the game and load up the loading screen for the first time, it'll play a little audio log of one of Talion's memories. Some of these, as you piece them together, you kind of understand that, okay, Talion was once a ranger for Gondor, I believe out of Illithien, which is where Faramir is in Two Towers and Return of the King. And he does something, he kills someone that had raped his wife.
That sounds like a legitimate reason to kill somebody.
Yeah. And then Talion's wife's dad says, I'm going to have you executed. Talion's wife says, no, I'm pregnant with Talion's child, so that is why you guys are now exiled off to the Black Gate. I wish they had made this more front and center, because Talion, as this game has gone on, seems to kind of just be like, I'm on a quest for vengeance. I'm just like every other dude, grizzled, on the cover of every other video game on a quest for vengeance. But like, these little audio logs make it apparent that like, oh, Talion has a backstory that's very good, that it's kind of, you see that he has a history of violence, but that he's driven to protect the ones he loves.
Yeah. I mean, wouldn't you be?
Yes.
Okay.
Well, yes. But it does a much better job than grizzled.
Dude, bro.
The standard, like, God of War, like, oh.
Yeah, I gotcha. So with the Nemesis system, you were telling me about it earlier. They, as you kill the guys, right? They get stronger. Well, you kill them, they don't necessarily get weaker, but when you die, they respawn.
No. If you kill somebody and you execute them, they will stay dead.
Okay.
However, if you kill someone and they have killed you before, there is a chance they'll survive.
Yeah.
And they'll come back scarred or burnt. Or one dude
or
has
whatever.
this like burlap sack tied around his face because I just effed him up so much. But he killed me enough times that he has a high enough chance to always come back.
To come back, yeah. And then as you...
It's kind of fun when I see him pop up on the map. I'm like, oh, I'm killing you again.
Yeah, but as you kill them, do they get more resistances? I've heard they get like immunities to certain types of damage or certain kinds of attacks.
Okay, so let's say...
Like, I know that... I don't know how that works.
If you're Italian and you come across a bunch of orcs standing around a fire, and you shoot the fire so that... the campfire so that the fire bursts up and burns them, and one of them runs away and lives, he'll come back burnt, and he'll be a captain. He'll have a vendetta against you.
But will he have like an immunity to fire damage?
No, but sometimes if they'll be scared of fire, and other times they'll have a hate of fire. So if you burn him again, instead of it getting hurt, it'll turn on regenerated health for him, and he'll be a lot harder.
He'll enrage, basically.
Yeah, he'll enrage.
Huh.
So that's the cool thing. That's the thing I like about the Nemesis system, is that as you're playing through the game, it does a really great job of helping you build your own internal story for Talion and what Talion's doing.
Well, yeah, and that's part of, I think that's a part of a lot of these open world games is you have...
Yeah, but this does it better than any other open world
Well,
game.
yeah, I mean, it's obviously, it's not going to be, like, there's a lot of story to go with, and, like, Assassin's Creed has a set story for each character, but the way that you go about doing all the stuff is kind of your own thing.
Yes.
If you want to run in and kill everybody...
But, like, the Nemesis system does a good job of making going out and hunting orc as story-driven, as entertaining as doing the Golem missions or the Outcast missions.
The actual story missions?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because you in your mind build up the own, okay, here's how I'm going to hunt this guy. Here's what his vulnerabilities are. Here's how I'm going to attack him. The thing I like a lot more than Assassin's Creed games is that there's no set way to get to an orc.
Because they're always moving around. They're always roaming or whatever.
Where in like the Assassin's Creed games, sometimes you got to interrogate somebody. You don't have to interrogate anybody. If you want to learn their weaknesses, you can interrogate somebody, but you don't have to. If you want to draw them out, you can just send them a death threat, and they'll come after you. You send them enough death threats, they'll come after you.
Eventually, they'll come running out of their little hole.
They'll be strong enough, but they'll definitely come after you.
Yeah.
So it kind of... I think the Assassin's Creed series should definitely ape the Nemesis system.
Well, I mean, it's a little too late for the two that are coming out this year.
Well, yes.
But maybe for the two that are coming out next year, because they're going to do two more anyway.
Yes. I mean, it's very interesting. It's very cool. I think the Nemesis system is something that we should see in a lot more games.
Well, but when you start seeing it in more games, it then becomes like every game has this system. It's not.
Well, yeah, but remember when like Half-Life had that first like squad-based AI that would come after you and like sort of intelligently, and then all other shooters did it too?
Yeah.
It kind of raised the bar, and then everyone's like, okay, this is what we now have to meet.
This is what we have to do.
The Nemesis system raises that bar.
Yeah, sort of. But I mean, if it's an open world game and it makes sense for that, then yeah. But the whole these named orcs come back, that's kind of dumb.
The story caveat of, well, they only come back because you didn't execute them. If you take their head off their shoulders, they're not coming back.
But see, and that's just it. You say kill them, and I'm like, well, do you beat them and they run away, or do you kill them and their life bar just goes to 0 and you don't like do the whole crazy animation?
There's like 3 or 4 ways to kill them. One of them is 2 of them are executions.
Yes.
And the executions are what you see in the videos where he like stabs orcs at the chest and then spins his sword around and cuts its head off.
Okay.
There are also ground executions where he'll cut their head off on the ground.
Just stand on top of them and do it. Yeah.
However, if you go to interrogate them after you learn your intel or whatever, you'll just pop back, they'll be stunned, and you'll stab them in the face. Or you'll, or there's a flurry, it's called a flurry attack, where you just swing in your sword and they just drop because they're out of life at that point. They drop, they're dead, maybe they're actually unconscious or whatever not. At that point, you cannot walk over to them and stab them and kill them on the ground.
Okay, so you have to do the crazy execute move.
You have to do the crazy execute move.
Okay, and to make sure. So what happens if you do that to all of them? Do they just randomly generate a bunch of new orcs?
They will, yes. As you
There'll always be another orc to fill the spot.
Yes, as you execute them, like...
They just fill back up.
You've seen that Nemesis system map with
like,
all the orcs.
It's like 15 or 20 guys.
There'll be dead bodies scattered around it, and then once you die, those dead bodies will get shuffled off the board and new recruits will come on.
Okay. And see, that seems kind of fun, but it's like, okay, well, I've already killed this dude, or the guy in this spot, 9 times. Why can't I just wipe out his whole clan?
That's the other good thing. They're never in one spot. the orcs do a wonderful job of migrating.
Well, no, I'm saying like one spot on the board, not necessarily on the overworld map.
Yes, that's the thing. One spot on the board. Oh, on the Nemesis board.
Yeah, like you've got 3 rows of 6 or whatever.
Yeah, but then if you make it through the whole thing without dying, you can actually clear the board.
Okay.
But then once you die, time passes, the board reshuffles.
I guess.
Fills back in.
I mean, yeah.
The cool thing that you brought up earlier before we started recording was the orcs spawning. This game does a wonderful job of spawning.
It's not like, oh, here's a closet and there's a bazillion orcs in it.
Yes. There will literally, like, if you sneak around as you're watching the map, you'll see orcs migrate and move slaves and go on, like, cattle drives and stuff like that. So that when you're in a stronghold and an alarm is sounded, the orcs all, descend on you.
All the little red dots start showing up on your screen and they just come down on top of you.
All the orcs descend on you. They don't just pop in and descend on you. It makes sense that they would come running from out of the stronghold or even from within the stronghold and come out and attack you.
So they spawn where you can't see, and then they come running.
Yeah, basically they spawn where you can't see, and then there's a migratory program for them.
Yeah, it's like, okay, well this guy was just in the backyard.
But you're never gonna find it's not gonna be like Destiny where you walk across a door you can't go in that's shrouded in darkness because that's where the monsters come out.
Oh, come on now. That's just that. Yeah, I mean that is really lazy.
Yes,
that's super lazy, but. To keep the worlds populated, they can't just keep. I mean, they could just keep having dropships drop dudes off, which that's kind of cool when that happens in Destiny. Is the little dropships come down and they fire on you and whatever. But
I mean, that's a good example of the kind of what do they call the special events in Destiny?
The public events.
Yeah, the public event.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's the cool thing about Shadow of Mordor is that every encounter where you go hunt an orc feels like that.
Except you're doing it by yourself.
Yes. Like, it feels in the way that you're making your own story.
Yeah. Well, like I said, open world games kind of have that feel to them.
Yeah.
It's just, this seems like this one's doing it better than, say, Infamous or Assassin's Creed, or even, maybe to a degree, Skyrim, not so much.
I wouldn't say better than, because, like...
They have a...
The world is I mean, the areas you're given are like... There's a lot of, like, river valleys and mountains and ruins. I mean, it's very artificially built to be, free-running, scalable.
Yeah.
Where that part of Mordor wouldn't really look like that at this period in time. So, I mean, but it's a caveat for the game.
Yeah, you have to.
Obviously, there's not going to be a lot of buildings for them to scale because people don't really live in Mordor, but...
It's all orcs is.
But now you're in, like, the ruins of the Gondorian. Right after the Sauron died the first time, Gondor did set up outposts. So now you're in the ruin of those outposts.
Yeah. Okay. I mean, it seems like it's a pretty fun game. I've heard a lot of positive stuff about it. I haven't picked it up.
Surprisingly, an amount of positive stuff about it. It's rated higher than Destiny.
Well, that's not hard to do though because it got panned pretty hard.
But it's only like 1 or 2 points on Metacritic. I think the last time I checked, behind Super Smash Brothers.
Yeah, well, Smash Brothers is gonna have. It's like the Nintendo tax. When we buy games, there's always that Nintendo bump when it comes to review scores because it's like, it's a new Mario game.
Yes, but once again, Mordor is only 1 or 2 points behind that. So, and this is coming out. This is a licensed game.
Yeah.
The Lord of the Rings
which is in and of itself is a pretty big deal because most licensed games are junk. Most, not all, but most of them are middling at best.
And this shows you that they're handling the expanded Tolkien universe, expanded Middle Earth universe, with the respect it deserves.
Yeah. Well, and like
there's
I said,
depth there to mine.
When you are mostly done or going to take a break or whatever, I'd like to borrow that game for a couple of weeks. Which, by the way, I'm going to give you Dragon Quest back since you're here.
So I tried to fix Kirby. I couldn't fix Kirby.
Did you break it?
No. So here's my only criticism against Shadow of Mordor. Is the next game better effing be The Legend of Aragorn, where you follow him from a small child showing up in Rivendell after his mom dies, all the way through the crowning of the king. If not, Monolith, you missed the boat. I don't even know you anymore.
Well,
because
like you said, there's all the issues with the rights and being able to do that stuff.
That's the thing. Warner Brothers owns all that now.
I guess.
So they could totally do that. And the cool thing about this is
you'd have to play all of Lord of the Rings.
there's no other character that the Nemesis system would make more sense to be applied to than Aragorn.
Yes.
Because by the time he's at the Black Gates, orcs are running from him. It's only that giant troll that they have fight him.
Yeah.
Because everyone knows, oh, that's Aragorn. You're going to get your head cut off.
Don't F with that guy.
And building Aragorn up. And the cool thing about this is like, in my mind, I could see, oh, well, you know, you could start the game in Lothlorien in the south of Mirkwood as he's in his 20s or 30s and meets Arwen and goes adventuring and, you know, maybe finds out more about Isildur and who he is. And then you can move north in Mirkwood to the hunt for Gollum, or you can move southeast to Rohan and the Rohan campaigns that he was part of with, I just forgot his name.
No clue.
Who's the Rohan king? There's Theoden. While he rides with Theoden's grandfather when Theoden is a small child, and then you can move him into Mordor, and you can move him around the north with Bree protecting the Shire because Gandalf thinks, oh wait, I'm pretty sure the ring's there. We need to protect that. Aragorn spent a lot of time around the Shire and then went into Mirkwood and caught Gollum, and that's how they knew, oh, he has the ring. Gollum then escapes and goes to Mordor.
And then goes to Mordor and gets captured there. And
yeah.
I mean, it seems like that would be a fun premise for a game. It seems like,
and then,
okay,
are you
going to play?
You could do.
There's going to be large sections where they go 3 years later because
Yeah.
you're not going to want to play that game for like 20 years.
Well, yeah, but like you would only play, like I said, you would play that first point to a story point where he finds out who Isildur is, and then you would move to something else, you know. And as when he finds out who Isildur is, he doesn't want to be king. That's the whole story about Aragorn.
Yeah.
Is Aragorn doesn't want to be king. He doesn't want to be the ruler of men. He doesn't want the everything that's put on him. It's Arwen who says, no, you have to.
Yeah.
Like,
you have to bring the 9 kings back together.
I love you. I believe you can do this. I believe you're worthy to do this. Her love for him pushes him to finally become the king. And all of that story, the story with Elrond, because Elrond doesn't want Aragorn to be king either because he knows it's going to mean Aragorn's going to die probably very poorly because all the other kings have died very poorly. That's why he cares for Aragorn as a foster child. So it's like, all this stuff happens, you know, going through Rohan, you know, and it would be easy to just kind of like Assassin's Creed does, like, oh, you're now, you know, on this area, you're now in this area, you're now in this area. You can fast travel to fill out stuff, but this is where the story stuff is happening now.
I mean, it's just, you're talking about a game that would take place over 20, 30 years.
60 to 70.
See, exactly. So he would go from being a teenager to an old man.
Well, no. He's a Dunedain of the Númenórean blood. So, like, when Aragorn... I'm about to blow your mind.
When Aragorn died, he was like 130 years old.
When Aragorn takes the crown, he's in his 80s. Now, Viggo Mortensen's a little rough around the edges. He definitely doesn't look like an 80-year-old.
No.
So, but that would be the type of thing. And it would just be like, okay, now we're moving to you've unlocked the next area. You know, 10 years pass. And he's
so wait, what you're saying is he was born about the time Gollum found the ring.
No.
You said there was 80 years between when Gollum found, or when...
There's 80 years between when Bilbo finds the ring.
Oh, okay.
And the Battle of Five Armies.
So he was born about the time Bilbo gets the ring.
Yes.
Roughly.
In fact, it's been long rumored that at the end of this Battle of Five Armies, when Bilbo goes back to Rivendell to see Elrond again, which he does in the story. You're
going to see a very young...
You're going to bump into a... Like a 10-year-old, 11-year-old Aragorn. Which would be totally okay and would be apropos towards the story. Which everything they've added so far has been pretty apropos towards Tolkien's mythos. Even the elf dwarf thing.
I was going to say, even freaking Orlando Bloom running around and killing orcs.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
I mean, he was alive then, obviously.
Yeah, he's alive then, and he's Thranduil's son.
But he wasn't in those books.
No, he's not in those books. But all that stuff was, once again, is they're mining it out of the appendices.
I suppose.
Because if you read The Hobbit and then you jump into The Lord of the Rings, The Hobbit's not built like The Lord of the Rings, and it's not meant to be read at the same level.
No. The Hobbit is more, what, early teens?
Yeah, it's a kids type book.
Okay.
It's made to be read to children before bedtime.
in little
Whereas
chunks.
The Lord of the Rings is dealing with very massive themes of personal responsibility, friendship, death.
Things like that.
Yes. So Peter Jackson was in an enviable position of having to merge essentially a children's story and have it sit next to
A young adult story or
an Oscar-winning adult
screenplay.
story. Yeah.
Yeah.
Which is what they kind of did, for better or for worse.
Yeah. Well,
I don't agree with the people that are like, this is this generation's the prequel trilogy. Like, no, there's no.
They're better than the prequel.
Yeah, there's no
Jar
Jar Binks. So
there's no Jar Jar equivalent, unless you really want to say like one of the dwarfs is the Jar Jar equivalent.
I had one friend that he was like, the fat one's Jar Jar. I was like, no, Bombor's fat in the book. Yeah, like, they make fun in the book of how fat he is. The only reason they have him doing the whirling dervish thing is so that it's not only fat jokes about him. So that you can be like, oh, yeah, okay, he's kind of cool. Ish.
He's coolish for a fat dwarf.
But, like, the main thing they added, if you're wondering, to the Hobbit movies is the love triangle between Evangeline Lilly's character, the dwarf, Keely.
Kate from Lost.
Yeah.
And
Keely and Legolas.
Yeah.
And they do this because they want to show how much Legolas hates dwarves when he meets Gimli.
Yeah.
Which is something they didn't do in the movies, which does come across in the books.
Yeah.
Is there's horrible racism between those two peoples.
Well,
and most of it is born out of what's going to happen in this Battle of Five Armies.
That's cool. I mean, yes. I was interested in that game. It's just I had already bought the game for, September, October.
Yeah, I know. That's why I canceled my Destiny pre-order.
Yeah, you played in the beta. You didn't like what you played.
Yeah,
I liked
never
what I
felt
played.
like safer with canceling that pre-order and getting this.
Yeah, well, I mean, I like what I played and I like what I'm playing. I'm just doing mostly PvP. So, but it seems like a fun game. It's definitely on my list of games to play that came out this year. I'm probably not going to pick it up until maybe the end of October. Probably more like I'll get it for Christmas.
We'll see you next week. You see that deal?